appreciate you doing this, man. I wanted to get somebody from the military on because, and I'm not my normal, I'm in my 9 to 5 clothes. Typically, I'm doing it with a baseball hat and a hoodie on. But I wanted to get somebody in the military involved because I go to schools and I'm speaking, and when I talk to young people and what do you want to be? Do you want to be a police officer? Whatever it is, I try to find somebody that I can bring some resources. And I had a young man a couple of weeks ago tell me he wanted to join the Army. And I mean, my only experience with military was my dad's an ex-Marine, fought in Vietnam. And then, I've got an uncle in the Army, cousins and stuff that were in Army and maybe Marine Corps, friends in the Navy, but I didn't have any personal experience other than, listening to David Goggins' book and following him and stuff like that. So I really, really appreciate you coming in to kind of help out these young people. So if you don't mind, Sarge, real quick, just a quick, we know it's Army, but just title, name, that kind of stuff so we can let people know what's going on.
My name is Sergeant First Class Brian Young. I'm the station commander over at the Myrtle Beach Recruiting Station.
Okay.
Joined, like I said, we talked earlier, I joined in 2001, so I've been in for a couple of days anyway.
Sure.
I guess really the thing that I talk to most people about is kind of my Army story and why I joined.
Yeah.
And really, there's a lot of people like me, I guess. I was in high school getting the grades that kept me on the football team and kept mom and dad off my back.
Sure.
Could have been better grades, but I did what it was. I did the minimum, right?
I relate. I did less than the minimum and somehow still made it through. Teachers were passing you or whatever. I don't remember ever doing any homework in high school whatsoever.
I was just thinking about that the other day. My daughters have an hour or two every night. I don't know how I would have gone completely crazy.
Yeah. Well, I had lunch this morning with my daughter, and she was like, "Daddy, if you say, is it a unicorn or an unicorn?" I'm like, "It's a unicorn." "No, I bet you $25 it's an unicorn." Well, they were just learning that you use a or an based on either vowel. It starts with a consonant or a vowel. I never had any idea about that. And then I'm like, "Is it a apple or an apple?" I'm like, "Well, maybe we're onto something here." Yeah. So I immediately Googled this thing with my third grader, and I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
My daughters will ask me questions about their homework. If it's social studies, science, stuff like that, I could probably help them out. I might not know it, but I can work my way through it. You give me a math problem. If it's 11, I got to take a boot off to count. But math is because I never had an interest to it because it was hard.
Right.
So like all things, instead of applying the focus on areas where I was weak, I avoided it. And so it's come back to haunt me through the years, know. But I really did the typical high school guy stuff, right? I played football. I grew up in Vermont, so hunting and fishing with family and friends, stuff like that. Outside all the time, doing, whatever, young boys do in high school. Wasn't a troublemaker, didn't get into trouble, didn't do anything wrong. Lived right next to the high school, and I remember going early every day to give a note to the principal so I could leave for all 3 lunches, even if I got stopped by the sheriff, he wouldn't have done anything. But I was really big about rules following, wanted to do what was right kind of thing. Kind of had aspirations of being a police officer or being maybe even a wildlife biologist, but applied to some colleges and never followed up with them. Typical guy thing, I think.
I made it 3 days.
What's that?
I think I made it 3 days in a community college in Alabama.
Well, I applied in high school like every, like
you're supposed to do, right?
Like the counselors tell you to, but I followed through with none of those. I probably still have the book somewhere in a box, from I remember University of Maine had a good wildlife biology program that I was all about interested in. I remember they had a picture of a bobcat that they were doing tests on. And I never finished the application processes. But then, I graduated high school and I had jobs and I did, stumbled into friends and family, got me different jobs. I was doing photo finish at a Greyhound racetrack. I know nothing about photography, but the football coach, linked me up with it. And then I did landscaping, and you can imagine in Vermont how much landscaping you get done in a year, So, but I got enough jobs to where mom and dad weren't harassing me too much. Like, what are you doing with yourself? Still waiting to figure things out. And they were patient. I had patient parents, probably a little bit too patient, and then I kind of reached a point where I got a job in a factory painting beige parts with beige paint and, 400, 500 parts a night. And I remember watching a lady, meander towards the front doors during break, just a couple minutes before break, like a robot. And I'm thinking, she's been here 30 something years. I can't do this 30 hours a week, let alone 30 years.
Yep.
And that was really the catalyst, that the high water mark really that kind of pushed me to looking at something different. And now mom and dad always preached education. I just didn't listen.
Sure.
And then I applied, went to college. But I'd already started being an adult at that point. I had a truck, and I had truck insurance and gas and all those things. And then
payments, you got to get a job.
When my college experience was not your typical college experience. I went to college and I did 40 hours of work a week. Started off with temp jobs, and working from, answering phones to boxing up Burton snowboard shoes and T-shirts. I worked at a chocolate factory. I did everything, but it put money in my pocket is what it really boiled down to. It was flexible. And then I got to a point where I was going to apply to police departments. All my friends and everybody were police officers, and went through the hiring process, did great, but they ended up hiring 2 other full-time certified. So at the time, I got very frustrated with that. I was like, I'm an amazing candidate. I know I'm going to be great. I got dog training experience. I got security experience.
I want to do it.
Yeah, I'm eager. I'm young. I'm fit, They didn't hire me. They hired 2 other guys. Now, as a business aspect, they did a great choice because those guys were full-time certified, where they would have to send me to the academy, which is, I don't know, 10, 20,000. I don't know how much an academy
and a risk. They didn't know if you're going to come through or whatever.
What if I didn't pass?
That's right.
So all I had was potential.
Yeah.
So I looked at different resources to figure out, I'm sick of begging for a job, right? Because it's really what I was doing. And I had interest in military in high school. I just didn't follow through with it. Talked to recruiters and just didn't really follow through with it.
But you also went through the process and knew what you didn't want to do. You knew you didn't want to work in a factory for 30 years. Right. Like I'd worked in factories. I've got family that have worked in factory after factory after factory and hate their jobs. And like I worked in a place that made wood reels for cables. The tables we saw in the 1970s, you just flip it up and it's a table now. But they were literally guys that their whole job was to take a nail gun and run it around a light that was shot on the table all day, 8 hours a day. And it would bounce itself and just and then push it down the belt to the next one comes on and just nail gun all day. And I worked there.
Factory work.
Oh my God. I worked there for like 6 months, 3 months before I got hired, because everybody had to go in through a temp service. And there was guys that worked there for 20 years through a temp service. Yeah. 0 benefits, nothing. And the machine that I was running took 9 people to operate it, and they were only going to hire 3 people permanently. And so when the machine would break down, they would freak out about all the productivity and the money they're losing. I'm like, I need to learn how to run this machine. Right. That's the way for me to get hired on, get a raise. And through the temp service, I was making $6 an hour. Manager, whatever it was, comes out and he's like, I'm going to give you a shot. We've never hired anybody this fast. We're 3 months in. I'm going to give you a shot. You're going to go from $6 to $9.53 an hour. Right. I thought I won the lottery.
I was going to say, I thought you were a millionaire.
I thought I won the lottery. And this was in Alabama, and I'm originally from Northeast Tennessee. And I could remember going home at Christmas, bumping into friends like, I'm not moving back here for less than $10 an hour. There's just not a chance.
Yeah, I'm a big baller now.
Oh yeah, man! With my 953, I don't even know if I was making it at that point because it was incremental. It went from like 6 to 750 to 8 to whatever. But I mean, but for me at that point in time, it was life-changing money. And then I went out and I made the mistake that I try to teach young people about not doing right now. I run out and I get a $600 truck payment, and now you got to have a job. Yeah. You can't go chase those dreams. You can't do whatever. You've got to work a 9 to 5 to make sure you make that truck payment and rent and that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a family where stability was the big piece, finding a stable job. Yeah. What was, my dad, you gotta apply to the post office. And I'm like, I've seen it. I don't want anything to do with that post office because he looked at it as a stable income. You're working for the government
and retirement.
Yeah. Right. It's all about stability for them. And, as generations change, we're talking about youth, but we were youth at one point, and I'm sure our parents were like, what is wrong with these guys? Yeah. But, I looked at the college piece, and then I did that. And then I started looking at the recruiters, and I talked to everybody. And the last branch I talked to was the Army. And at the time when I was in high school, I thought Army too big, too impersonable. Right. But now I'm 27, 28 years old, and I realize, all right, big organization means more room for growth. Sure. Now I'm not in jobs for promotions, but boy, they sure help. They sure a good pat on the back every once in a while is good. Yeah. And so I went and talked to the Army recruiter last, and he said something that stuck with me. He was able to give me, he showed me, hey, look, you qualify for this. He pulled up the jobs, and there was an infantry airborne ranger. And I was like, wow, that looked great on my resume because I just got denied police work, not because I was disqualified, but it was because there was other people more qualified. Sure. I'm like, man, that looked great on my resume. Right. That's going to set me apart. And so I looked at it, I said, wow, 4 years. That's a big commitment, man. That's a big commitment. And without pause, he looked at me, he said, you're right, it is. And the Army's willing to do that for you.
Sure.
I wasn't thinking like that.
Right.
I was thinking me. I
yeah,
came in with my hand
You're
out.
the one making the commitment.
Here I am, a 20-year-old kid with nothing to show for it. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I'm thinking I got the leverage.
Yeah.
I didn't have any leverage. I
Right.
had potential.
Sure.
Everybody's got potential.
Sure.
And so they offered me, it was the first organization that offered me something for my potential and to give me something tangible. Right. And so, now, I use the example when I talk to folks when they come to the office. I explain to them, my dad went to college to be a gym teacher. But he found gym teachers, they don't want to leave. There's no jobs out there.
Right.
The gym teachers that have those jobs ain't going anywhere until they retire.
Right.
So he ended up getting a job in construction, worked for Carpenters Union, stuff like that. Well, in the Carpenters Union, he was a foreman right off the bat because he had a college degree. That separated him from his peers.
Sure.
Back then, high school was check the block. College was external.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore. College is becoming a check the block as well.
For our generation, I think that's kind of where it started. Was you have to go to school. You have to go to school.
What's going to make you different from the person standing outside? On the movies where they show them all lined up in the chairs waiting to go talk for the job interview. What separates from you from the pack?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the youth nowadays are realizing that. What is going to set me apart? So now I have an opportunity. We just put a young man. He's getting college loan repayment. So he joined. He gets to pick his job. They're paying back all of his college debt. He gets to pick a job that he has an interest in. And then when he gets out, he's similar to what I did. I did the college loan repayment and I get to pick my job. So he's getting his loans paid off. He's going to join the Army, get out, and he's going to have tangible stuff to put on his resume, not just a fluff resume, kind of like what I had, right? He's got certificate. He's going to have certificates, whether let's say he gets a computer job, he's going to have Cisco certifications, like actual, I am certified to do X, Y, and Z plus my college degree.
Well, the young people you're talking to when you're speaking at schools and stuff, I mean, do they realize before you speak to them the benefits and the opportunities in the military?
I think vaguely they do. Even when they come in, I think if you express to them, a lot of times we spend more time explaining the process of the enlistment, because the benefits are out there. You can Google it.
Because I had to, when I signed up for the Navy, and I don't remember what the program was, but if you bring people in, it moves you up.
Referral.
Right. So the referral program gets you higher E4 or whatever when you go in, it seems like. And they had just been, the recruiter had just been to a school and they were filling out comment cards or questionnaires, and someone had written everything to where you written it backwards where you had to read it in a mirror. And they're like, do you know this kid? And I'm like, yeah, that's my best friend. And so now they're all about him, try to get him to do the ASVAB he takes, and he's qualified for nuke, and they're offering $50K sign-on bonuses. And like, I was just some dumb kid living in the projects. I didn't even know those opportunities like that existed, to get in. Like I was telling you a story earlier with the Marine recruiter. I mean, I thought it was kind of just infantry stuff,
Yeah. Sometimes like people think that, I don't know if we live in the woods with camo on our face, and they think everybody in the Army is infantry.
Right.
We have 150 jobs.
You got to have doctors and everything, when I go
to a school, I challenge them, maybe we'll have a water bottle or a coffee mug or something. I'm like, who here can tell me a job we do not have in the Army?
Right.
We get a few guesses that are pretty close, but for the most part, we're covering a basis. We've got 150 jobs. It's pretty challenging to come up with a job we don't have. Yeah. And so people always say, well, I don't want to deploy. Well, I don't control that.
Right.
I don't control that. But if deployment is something that you're fearful of, then pick a job that puts you in a comfort zone.
Right.
Infantry, I'm an infantry guy, so I get pretty darn close to the fight. Yeah. But that's what I wanted to do. Right. So pick a job that gets you closer to a comfort level you're comfortable with. Sure. How close an X-ray tech get? Right. We're still getting, based off of rank, your rank and how many years you're in and stuff. That's where your money it's not based off of what job you have, right? So find a job that you're comfortable with. X-ray tech, you're not dragging X-ray machines into the battle, right? But it's something that we need as an organization. Sure. And I think people don't understand that. I still get it occasionally, not so much in Myrtle Beach is a good area, but you get it from time to time where, I'm going to bring my son or daughter in because he needs discipline. Okay, cool. Well, when he gets some discipline, then he can come in. This is not a scared straight program. No, it's not babysitting. It might have been years ago. I remember hearing the old "go to war, go to jail" mantras. Where it was, hey, we're gonna, you're gonna get sentenced to or find whatever unless you waive it, unless you go join the armed military. I've heard those stories. I don't know if there's truth behind it, but
sure.
Most of the people, if I was to capture, statistically, the walk-in people that come through the door, typically those folks are not going to be qualified.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's an aptitude level. They can't pass the test, right? Or it's a moral thing that's holding them back. They got in some trouble that's coming back to bite them.
Right. And so you went in later, what, like 26, 27, something like that?
When I went to basic.
Did that help you at all? I mean, obviously you're a little more mature than 17, 18-year-old kid.
Some of it, yeah. I think I kind of could see the bigger picture. I understood that drill sergeants yelling, it's not a personal thing.
Right.
Right. I get that from time to time. Like, I don't want to get yelled at. Okay, let me explain to you why there's a yelling part of this piece.
Because when we talked on the phone, you explained it to me, and I wanted to make sure that you talk about this because I had no idea, Right. And now after speaking to you about it, I get it. It makes sense.
Going to the mall and grab. Yeah, I tell people go to the mall because we're right next to the mall. Go to the mall. Go grab me 100 people. Now go get them in a formation. And let's time how long that takes you. Right. You're going to get people, what do I stand over here for? Well, I want to stand next to my buddy. I can't stand over. Now let's get some drill sergeants out there who go through some pretty intense training, some very focused training on how to motivate and instill and build leadership, and plus the tactical part of that and then the technical piece. They're very, very skilled at what they do. And so let's get those guys out there who are trained in that stuff to actually go and put those 100 people and see how much faster, because the yelling and the screaming, it's an intimidation piece, and it's not deemed, it shouldn't be looked at negatively. It's to motivate you to move faster and quicker. Right. There's so much stuff that you have to do in basic training. They don't have time to explain to you the why. Right.
And you'd also explain to me is that you don't need 9 hours sleep. Right. They're teaching you that you don't need this and
basic. I remember in basic, we got in trouble for something. It didn't follow through with it, but it was one of those drill sergeants. He was mad at us for that. It was something foolish, but he said, by regulation, I'm only supposed to give you 4 hours of sleep tonight. But nowhere in that regulations does say have to be continual. Now we got a normal sleep, but it was one of those things you're like, oh man, this guy's serious, But people, I hear it quite a bit, basics to break you down and build you back up. I don't believe in that mentality. I believe that basic training is designed to show you the priorities in your life, right? So my nephew, for example, went and he told me that the first week or so they gave him like 30. They said, hey, time, everybody's going to shower and time starts now. And you have until this time to get everybody showered. Right. And personal hygiene needs to be completed. And he looked at his watch and he counted the people and he's like, that's 30 seconds a person. And so they're teaching him maintaining these time hacks, right? But what they really were teaching them is that you don't need 45-minute showers. Sure. You need to wipe the funk off you and move on. Occasionally you're going to have to get a deep clean, but it's not a necessity, right? In chow hall, you get in there, you don't talk because if you got time enough to talk, you got time enough to get out of here, right? So they're instilling you food is fuel. It's not entertainment, right? But that's a basic training environment, and it's to kind of reiterate to you what's truly important, and they're teaching you how to backwards plan, right? And that's a big thing people don't understand. For example, moving, right? When you move, all right, so my report date to my new unit is this date. I need to be, at that location on this day. So my flight has to be within this window. Sure. Movers have to come within this time. So you backwards all your planning. That's
reverse engineer all of it.
They teach you all that stuff. And basics designed to teach you the basics of being a soldier, not to be a fine-tuned, well-disciplined soldier. That's where the unit comes into play, right? That's where you have those team leaders and squad leaders, platoon sergeants who have been through leadership schools. We got some amazing leadership schools out there. We're a Fortune 500 company.
Sure.
And so we spend a lot of time on our training. And it's not just people when they hear military training or Army training, they think, oh, shooting weapons. It's not just military, weapons system. It is leadership schools. I got to spend 2 weeks with Penn State University or Pennsylvania University doing this thing they call MRT, Master Resiliency Training. It's a civilian education. It's 2 straight weeks of not only teaching you how to be resilient, but how to teach others to be resilient. Right. And that's, all those things people don't realize, all those things can be used for towards your civilian education. Recruiting school, that's, was 7, I think it's like 7 weeks long, maybe 8 weeks long. Yeah. those are classroom time that we go to recruiting school for, can be used towards your civilian education. So I think that we get wrapped up with basic training and the yelling, but it's done for a reason.
Well, I could remember, when I was 17 and looking at the sign, I mean, I could remember not being terrified, but just scared. You didn't know, it's something new, right? And that's you see the movies, and some drill sergeant gets on a bus and screaming and yelling. It's like, oh my God, what'd I get myself into? But it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
I mean, it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or whatever. I mean, it's
I was able to realize that there's a difference between yelling and yelling at you.
Right.
Now, if I made a mistake, I would have heard it,
Sure.
But you kind of blend in with as much folks, and you look like, oh, I ain't doing what that guy just did, kind of thing. But I was able to understand the bigger concept there, and I didn't take things very personal.
I would also assume in that situation, the cream would rise to the top pretty quickly.
In certain, well, and definitely in certain schools you're going to anyways. Yeah. I remember airborne schools. It's 2 weeks. First week they teach you how to fall down, and the next week they throw you out the planes. It's not an intense
fast
school.
track.
Yeah, it's a lot of running and some technical pieces to it, but it's not an intense school. Where when I went to, it was called RIP back then, Ranger Indoctrination Program. Now it's called RASP, Ranger Assessment and Selection Process. That's the training that they go through to see who's going to make it to the Ranger Regiment, right? And so when I went through RIP, it was really a matter of, could you deal with all of this just horribleness, right? It was training, but it was just lack of food, lack of sleep to an extreme level. And it was, could you hack it kind of mentality. And RASP is a little bit different than that now. RASP is more of they did in RIP, they taught us things, but you had very limited time to grasp what was put out, and you had to apply it. Now it's more of a larger concept. So they're teaching you all the soldier skills at a more defined level with some very tactically and technically proficient soldiers out there. Some Ranger Regiment guys are, so the cream of the crop type folks. Yeah. And so they're teaching you what we call TTPs, what they learned and what they apply to the basics. And so they teach you this stuff, and then you have to apply it. Whether it be react to contact, break contact, they teach you some first aid stuff, calling in 9 lines to helicopters, land navigation, and then you apply it in a large mission towards the end. But you might not have to do all the pieces, but you never know when you're going to be called upon, right? So you apply it into bigger training, and it's a bigger concept.
And it's all for a reason. The training with lack of food, lack of sleep, whatever. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to get you as close to real combat stuff as possible, right? I mean, they're trying to put you under that stress.
Yeah, I think stress is a better word. Stress is important in training, regardless of what you're doing. I think stress is very important. Stress inoculation. I showed you a book before we start, the On Combat. Yeah. And I think it's an On Killing, David Grossman's book. He talks about they had a study with rats where they held them over a bucket of water, and the rat would kick and thrash. And when he would stop kicking and thrashing and kind of give up, they drop him in the water, and it would, within a few moments, it would drown. Right. And then they started taking rats where they hold him over the water. He would kick and thrash, and then he would give up, and they put him back in the crate or the cage. And they did this repetitively to where they built up, where they noticed that every time they held them over the water, the kicking and thrashing was less. Sure. But also when they finally did drop them in the bucket, it would take hours before it would drown. Sure. Where before, when they just did the kick and thrash, drop them in, he'd last minutes or whatever. I don't know the exact time frames, but the stress inoculation is very, very important because you're able to, and it's not just a combat thing, stress is everywhere in every job. Well, it's just the levels of how you can handle it.
Yeah. When I in my business that I owned, I preferred the stress and I felt like I performed better under the stress and the deadlines of whatever large project was going on, stuff breaking in the middle of the night, and it's got to be up now. I mean, we got 911 centers or whatever. I always enjoyed that. I felt I personally felt like I performed better under those situations.
I think stress is good in I don't even want to say moderation. I think stress is good for you, but it's how do you react to it? And what I've noticed is, I've got a son who's 22, and I can tell you the cell phones, right? They're a great tool, right? They're awesome. We use them. The technology on here, the applications in this is endless. Sure. What you can possibly do with this phone. What do we do with it? Play game. I'm guilty of it. I'm not trying to point fingers, but we use games. We play games. We horse around on social media. And social media is good in certain aspects, right? But what are you doing with this device?
Yeah.
How are you utilizing your time? And so what I noticed is it's creating an immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And so what I noticed, and I'll bring up my son, is he wanted to be not good, but he wanted to be great at something before he started it. And that's not reality.
Yeah.
It's not reality. It's not the reality I grew up in. It takes
not.
time. And so there's a great comic he was talking about, the way we use Google and stuff now is you wake up and you remember back in the day when we used to wonder about things?
Yeah.
Now you can just Google it and within seconds you know it. And it takes away from you understanding that something not everything is immediate. Some things are going to take time. It might take days, weeks, months.
I talk about it, and I've looked back on the last 3 podcasts, and I've brought it up on every one of them. But this instant gratification for everything, whether there's been studies about the looking at social media and likes and the release of dopamine because, and so they're searching that high or whatever. But there's a process. And you can't skip the process, no matter what it is. There's a process for everything. You can't skip it. There's a process to become a ranger. You just don't jump out of basic and be like, I'm a ranger now. I mean, there's a process. And I think that's one thing that gets lost on some, not even young people, but just people, is they think they can skip the process. I had a young man that worked for us who had went to school, and his degree was in like local city government management. I don't know what it was, but he could be a city manager. Well, this 22-year-old kid thought he was going to go take the city manager's job. Right. And I was like, that's not how it works. You got to go get an internship and then work in the mail room and you work to that. You don't, but no, this piece of paper says I can be the city manager, but your experience doesn't. Yeah. It's a piece of paper at this point.
You came in like this with nothing for us on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I see that a lot with, everybody in instant gratification,
and I'm guilty to it in a large part too. I'm not just saying because he's 22, he's more sucked into the phone than I am. I'm just as guilty. I think that from time to time you have to stop and think. Eric Thomas, another guy we were talking about. Eric Thomas talks about everybody's got these lion tattoos. Lions are a beast, and then somebody pointed out, like, Eric, don't you realize these lions sleep 23 hours a day? And you're giving us speeches about maximizing the time you're giving per day. Right, be a lion. He's like, but lions sleep 23 hours a day. And he goes, yeah, but look what they do in that 1 hour. Sure. Can you imagine if they were up for 20 hours? Right. What havoc they would wreak, around the savannah and all these places? So I think that sometimes we as people and not just youngsters, but everybody have to realize that we're all given 24 hours. Yep. I listened to something the other day that the guy said, a person who's like a self-made success is the only person that will ever admit that. Yeah. A self-made failure is still the same thing. They just refuse to admit it. Yeah. Well, and I talk to people like, so my story is kind of, grew up super, super poor. At 14, I started a business, helped my mom pay rent, landscaping business. We did that through the summer. School starts, fall comes, grass isn't growing. We ended up getting on welfare, food stamps, and all that. But the entrepreneurial bug bit me with that landscaping business. So I knew that's all I ever wanted to do was own a business. And I had a bunch of side hustles, and I tried a ton of different things. It never worked out. Then I met a mentor that changed my life. And then I started kind of looking back and reflecting. And then what I started realizing is what was important and what created me a change. My circle of influence is what I call it. When I stopped hanging out with just what I say ordinary people, and I sought out extraordinary people, that's when my life changed completely. Mm-hmm. And I think about that with the military and kind of the brotherhood and the bonds built there. The last podcast I did, I just uploaded one this morning. I still got another one to edit, was 2 guys that were running with gangs. Each one of them at 17 end up catching a case, one of them for murder and armed robbery. They do 17 years in the pen, get out. Now they spend all their free time writing books, talking to young people about not doing it. But I wonder if how difficult it would have been for them to find the same brotherhood they were seeking with a gang in the military and have a productive, life move forward and not lose that 14 and 15 years. I think when the penitentiary. When I talk to people, when they talk about, the Band of Brothers, like the show Band of Brothers, anytime you go through adversity with anybody, it doesn't have to be with the Army. Right. When you go through adversity with people, you create a bond, right? So I remember before I even deployed, I I've got friends that even if we never deployed together, I would still be friends with to this day.
Sure.
Because whether it be a training, like I remember one time we did we called it EDRI, where they alerted us, we came in and we ended up flying to Fort Bragg and ran a mission and then came back. But while we were out there, it was like this rainy, wet snow, and we were not prepared with clothing.
Right.
And it was just miserable. And then we look back on hey, remember that time we were at Bragg and we were sleeping in the snow and then it downpoured that night. And those things bring such a bond. And
Sure.
it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be an Army thing. I think anytime you go through adversity, but it's more glamorized and more noticeable because maybe it's because of the extremes sometimes that we go through as soldiers.
Probably.
And maybe deployment or, missions and training and abroad, it doesn't matter. When you go through adversity, you're going to get closer with those folks.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about David Goggins earlier, and I just finished up his book, which his whole story is unbelievable. Anyway, but my takeaway from that is just his willingness not to quit. Yeah. Like I met a young man, we were talking the other day about business, and he's like, I'm an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an idiot too. And he's like, but we made it. We did it. And I was like, yeah, we didn't quit. That was the difference. I mean, it's too easy. And I talk to people about making decisions based on money. And I lost a lot of money at one point in time. Thought I wanted to be a day trader in the stock market. I went and borrowed some money and ended up losing all of it because I was doing it for the money. There was no plan. There was no anything. I was chasing money.
The why is a big factor.
Absolutely. And like right now, my why, even for doing this, I mean, there's no money with this. I do it because my why is I want to help other young people realize that you don't have to be a victim of circumstance. You can go do whatever. It doesn't have to be, look, not everybody's cut out for the military. Not everybody's cut out to be a business owner. Everybody's cut out to go seek their own happiness though. And I just wrote a blog recently about when you're doing a job, the factory job, right? Whatever it is, there needs to be a component of money and happiness. If you just do something for money, when the money doesn't come, if I started this podcast for money and 3 weeks down the road or 3 months down the road and there's no money, it's too easy to throw your hands up and just quit. But if you're doing it because you enjoy meeting new people, you enjoy getting good content out to young people or just people in general, then you're not worried about the money. You just keep doing it,
And the most successful people out there, you'll notice, they focus on the why, not the stuff around them.
Yes.
I remember when I was in college, I told my son this, I could have told you exactly how long a carton of eggs would last and a case of ramen noodles. Because that's really what I lived on. I was living. There were some times where I was struggling. I was struggling hard, but it was self-induced. So I didn't have any way to complain about it because I waited and I had to work to go to college and all those kinds of things. But I grew from that, and I grew strength from that. I understand I went through that, and I can still function. Now, could I have picked up the phone and said, "Dad, Mom, I'm in a bad way. Can you give me $100?" They would have, right? They would have. But it was something that I needed to go through. I needed to go through that adversity, and I needed to understand that I was worth doing it. Right? I needed to understand that it is horrible what I'm going through right now. There's other people have it worse than me. I'm not trying to compare, but what I was going through was at that point was the worst thing I'd ever dealt with.
It's just part of your journey. I can remember my bottom. So when I quit the job making $9.53 an hour in Alabama, my wife and I moved back to Tennessee, and she went to go live with her it's before we got married. She goes to live with her mother. I'm living with my mom. My truck gets repossessed, and I could remember digging through my mother's couch cushions looking for change to walk to the gas station to buy a 2-liter Coke. And I'm like, I'm done. I don't care if I have to go to South Dakota to get a job. I'm not staying here and staying in this situation just because this is where I went to high school and was born or whatever. So
it's that high water mark. Like when I was in the factory, I reached that point where I can't do this. And I went to get my education. I tried to apply to jobs. I wasn't getting picked up for the jobs that I thought I was good for, right? And I reached that high water mark and I was like, I can't do this. What is going to set me apart from my peers? And the Army gave me that opportunity and it wasn't easy. The Army was not easy. There's parts of it that were easy for me and there was parts that were tough. And everybody's version of, I know some folks that went through basic training like this is horrible. And some people that went through, RIP or RAS were like, that wasn't that bad. And I went through and I remember I linked the why to back then I joined because I wanted to, the Army paid off all my college debt. I had $40,000 in college debt. They were going to pay it all off. They gave me a sign-on bonus and let me pick my job.
Right.
So I'm getting a little bit of coin, paying off all my debt for 4 years.
And you get to pick the job you want.
And I get to pick what job.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this is a no-lose situation, right? But still, I was a little hesitant about the 4-year thing. I know it's a long commitment. And I'm 28 now. I realize that's not that bad. 4 years is nothing. It would take me 3 times that to pay my loans off, right? And so when I went through RIP, for some reason, and I don't know exactly what it was, heard somebody, I didn't know anything about the Army, so I was always eavesdropping whenever people talked about the Army. Somehow I linked that I had to complete RASP, RIP when I did, and get to Ranger Regiment before I would see my bonus or get my college paid for, which was not accurate.
Right.
But that was my why was I dealing with this. Now, if I had no leverage on the why part, I don't know if I would have finished some of that. Because I remember one time my buddy, he's a great friend of mine, has been with me since the day we got off the bus. Funny story about that. Him and I they're going through handing out linen and stuff, and I'm last of the alphabet with Y, and I'd got like a pillow sheet, a pillowcase, no pillow, no blanket.
Just whatever's left.
Yeah, and it was late at night, and they're like, hey, just get some sleep. We'll get you in the morning. Well, they ran out of bunks, so they put him and I in another barracks away from everybody else, and they just told us to go sleep and didn't tell us anything to get up. And I'm like, what? And I remember waking up, and there's people in there's like civilian clothes and PTs and uniforms, and I'm looking around, and I asked he was like 17-year-old kid. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, oh, you have formation. I'm like, do I have formation? This kid has no idea who I am. Right. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I was so lost. And he goes, I don't know. So I think, all right, well, I'm going to do what I think is right. The drill sergeant said, go to sleep and we'll come get you, is what I thought he said. He didn't say anything like that. So I said, well, I'm going to stay here so he knows where I'm at. So about 11 o'clock, my buddy and I were standing there
just hanging out.
We were racked out. It was a rough night before. We were racked out. And he comes kicking in the door. What? They've been looking for us all day. Didn't know where we were at. So they came and found us in the bed. They thought, I don't know where.
AWOL,
day one. I don't know where they thought we were. Like, what? We were bumped a whole day behind because we're so far behind in process. That's how clueless I was with the Army. But, you learn through, watching everybody and leadership and all that kind of stuff. But the why, I remember we were in RIP and we were doing this low crawling thing across this field. We were getting punished for something. It was rainy and cold, and we were doing sprints and low crawl, and I was miserable. And the drill sergeant had this big lamp, and he was shining it across everybody. It was the middle of the night. We should have been asleep. It was a horrible point in my life. Just feeling so sorry for myself,
Sure.
And my buddy went up to me, and he was crawling next to me. He goes, hey, Young, how you doing? I'm like, not good at all. And he kind of laughed, and then I laughed, and, but my why, I said, I've got to deal with this. I've got to push through. And that reminds me of the Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas fight. Have you ever heard the story about Buster Douglas's mom prior to that fight?
I don't think so.
So from my understanding, I could be a little bit wrong in some of the facts, but Buster Douglas was kind of a last-minute pick for that fight, right?
Right.
In regards to when they picked fighters, it's not like 10 minutes before the fight.
Right.
So his mom, Buster Douglas's mom, was telling everybody, beauty salons, oh, my son's going to knock out Mike Tyson. He's going to knock out Mike Tyson. He's like, Mom, this is Mike Tyson. This is a heavyweight.
Slow down.
Yeah, like, stop. I'm just trying to fight here. I'm trying to make a living. And she's like, nope, he's going to knock out Mike Tyson. He's going to knock out Mike Tyson. And then a couple days before the fight, a day or two, his mom passed away. His why completely changed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've never heard that.
His why he was fighting completely changed.
Yeah.
Completely changed. And I think his why was so strong at that point, it didn't matter who he was fighting.
Right.
It didn't matter. He was doing that fight for his mom.
Yeah. And that's a better way to put what I'm talking about, the why, because money's not a good enough why for anything. We've all got bills to pay, that kind of stuff, but to do something for money, you can go get money at Taco Bell. The money's not a good enough why. It is a better way to put it.
If you look hard enough at any job, you could pick parts about the Army that are not that great. But you could work at Taco Bell and still find negatives.
Absolutely.
We're hardwired as human beings. I tell this to some of the students too. If you were to make a list on a piece of paper from head to toe, everything negative about yourself. Me, ball, or this and that, or head to toe. I can list dozens of things, right? Now make a list from head to toe of all the good things.
Right.
It's not going to be anywhere near as long as the negatives.
Right.
We're hardwired to look for the negative.
That's what we focus on.
It keeps us in our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Where we are where we think we should be.
Right.
You know, if we're not in a great enough shape, is because we don't think we're strong enough to work out as much as we should, or we're not disciplined on our diet because we don't think we can.
It's
right?
funny how so much of that stuff's mental. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and I worked out with a trainer for multiple years, and when he would give me a number, we're gonna do 12 reps. Number 11, 12.
Yeah.
If he wouldn't say a word, I mean, you'd be hitting 12, 13, whatever, and it's just the number was 12, so I have to break down at 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
I tell you, there's been many a run that we've done either as a platoon or a company or whatever, and you get back to the company area and you're thinking, we're about to right where this fire hydrant is, where we usually do this, where they call quick time. We start walking, and then they keep on running. It is like the trail of tears, people falling out behind you because they're so wrapped into, we think we're going to stop right there that I can't go any more than that.
Yeah.
And I think that was my favorite part about RIP, was it pushed me past all the barriers I thought was ever possible.
Yeah. Well, then
physically and mentally.
Well, that's what I say. Then you start learning about yourself and how so much of it's mental.
Yeah.
You know, again, you go back to Goggins' stories and stuff like that. This guy's 300 and some pounds.
Yeah.
Decides
he lost that twice.
Yeah, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Gets off the couch, says he's going to go run a mile or whatever.
He could barely run that mile. I remember in the book.
He didn't go anywhere, and comes back, starts eating donuts and stuff again. To I'm going to go run 100 miles and do it by myself when it's supposed to be a relay. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's mental.
Yeah.
I mean, he talks about pushing people through and beyond all that kind of stuff, and that's something. Even I feel like I'm fairly strong mentally. I can't comprehend that kind of stuff. I mean, and
I think I saw that a lot in basic training, and the benefit to basic training, not only to learn the basics of being a soldier, but the cool thing that I noticed from a lot of the younger ones that on a day-to-day were driving me crazy. I look back, I'm like, man, I probably would have never got yelled at if it wasn't for these jokers
right.
Doing these immature things. But I also saw people being put in situations they couldn't say no.
Right.
Couldn't say, you're in an environment, you can't say no.
Right.
Right. We're going to go rappel. I don't want to go rappel.
Right.
But you're put in a position where you can't, and then you go rappel and you realize, well, it's not that bad. That was actually kind of fun. I'm actually pretty good at this.
Right.
And then you start getting some self-confidence when you're put in a situation where you don't think you're going to be good, but you end up doing very well at.
Right.
And then you're like, wow. So your self-esteem starts to build, and you start to understand that your limitations aren't where they probably should. They're lower than what they should be.
Right.
And the self-discipline starts to kick in and be like, oh, I can do this and I can do that. And I started seeing that in basic training. And I think that everybody has parts of that during training. But really the not being able to say no, and then discovering that thing I was scared of, it's not that bad. Right. And I'm actually good at it. Right.
Well, and I was listening to, speaking about not saying no, I was listening to Jocko's latest book recently, and he was talking about the perception that military folks are just mindless following orders, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, you're giving orders, but I mean, they're building leaders. I mean, there's plenty of leadership schools you were talking about, and you have to be able to make decisions. One guy can't make every decision. It's just they're trying to teach you how to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, it's not a top-fed organization at all. It's a lot different than most people think it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of collaboration between everybody.
Sure.
But you also have to understand that the military, we need discipline. You need discipline in order to be effective. Yes, like in my organization now, we will have discussions with, my first sergeant commander where we think changes should be made or decisions should be done a little bit differently. At the end of the day, they're open to those decisions or those ideas. But at the end of the day, they make that final decision. When
the decision is made, that's the decision.
And I'm not the type of person where I'm going to be like, no, I think you're foolish. I have respect for you. Don't have to, like they say it all the time. You don't have to respect the person. You have to respect the rank. But in this organization, I have some great leaders, even at the battalion level, that I see not as much as I see the company level folks. That we discuss things, and at the end of the day, they take everybody's input. They take that, and then we're all on board. right? So, hey, let's try, some incentives of, some time off if they do this, this, and this. Well, I don't think we should do that. What about this? And we kind of hash it out. And at the end of the day, whether we agree or not doesn't matter, but there's input involved.
Right.
There's input involved.
And again, it's part of the process. What we talked about earlier, it's just part of the process. So make a decision. Now we got to move forward with the decision. The conversations and that kind of stuff's over with, and it's time to move on. Just like running any organization, I don't run my business to where I'm the dictator and this is what we're going to do no matter what. I mean, there's plenty of people in my organization that are way smarter than I am, and so I'd rather get a collaborative. I'll make a decision, but we just need to have a conversation about it.
I think that as an organization in the Army, yes, people at the end of the day have to make that decision and go with it, right?
Sure.
But, it's based off of their experience, their knowledge, all the training we've been through. But it's if you do a top fed where, hey, this just got put out, we're all doing this from now on, you need the buy-in at the bottom level. Yeah. But also, yes, in the military, we are very mission focused, and it's not just recruiting, it's in every level. Right. You have a mission, but those tasks at an individual level are so important that those are done to a standard. The Army is what I really love about the Army. Some people might argue this. I love the fact that we have standards. The standards from head to toe, everything about our uniforms, the way we wear our hair, our shave, everything about us has a standard because it's a uniformity, right?
Yeah. And as soon as you start letting them slide a little bit, and now the standard's lower and it just gets worse. And now you got to try to turn all that stuff around again. Listen to Jocko's book, and he was letting some other leaders kind of step up, and they were doing some exercise, and they had, these guys didn't check their gear, make sure they had what they want. Some people are showing up late for the boat. I mean, it's time to go. So you got the guys that are super regimented that are there ready to go, and then you got a few guys that have let the standards slip. Right. They're not getting their stuff in their gears, and again, that was part of the process. He was teaching them how to be leaders and let them go, but you can't. Well, at work.
You think about it, like you have an applicant that comes in and wants to join the Army. Hey, I have this. I'm good to go. I got no issues except for I have this severe reaction to whatever. Right? Like, can we just not say anything? Besides the fact of the moral piece of that, but you got to understand something. Let's just say we're doing a patrol in the mountains, right? And you have an allergic reaction to whatever this might be, right? That's not just a patrol anymore. Now the complexity of that mission is completely changed, because now it's a recovery, right? Because we got to look out for each other. You got to call in a helicopter or whatever, based on where you're at. But so that might be just don't say nothing. Yeah, that's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But the ripple effect to
absolutely.
The ripple effect is unbelievable.
It's funny. I was interviewing a young man the other day for an entry level position, and he was talking about coming in, the schedule. I'm like, we're 8 to 5. There's some overtime work. There's some travel, whatever. What we do between 8 to 5, you could do 9 to 6, 7 or whatever. I mean, we don't have to be super regimented about that. He's like, 8 to 5 is good. It's just some days I'll have to come in a little later because of my son. I'm like, look, if every Tuesday you got to do something and we know, and you take 15 minutes, right. He's like, nah, just sometimes we just don't get out of bed. And I'm like, whoa, no. Yeah, the first time you let that slip, now the next day's late, and it's not fair to the people that show up every day on time. So I was like, I've been through enough of this stuff, man. I know those red signs. We're not even going down that road. I appreciate the opportunity.
I remember I had we talked a little bit earlier. I did the dog training thing, right? And I kind of worked my way up, and I was in college, and I was the manager, right? I thought that was a big deal. I was the manager. This place called Doggy Daycare, which is just so amazing to put in your resume and then go talk to a police department about, you work where?
Yeah, I was a manager.
I was a doggy daycare, right? Not knowing that, it says doggy daycare on the resume, but the reason I worked there was my exposure to these dogs and then the way I was able to train and learn dog behavior, because I wanted to be canine, right? So I was trying to go down that path. So one of the employees, she was consistently late. And I remember one time she came in and I was just so frustrated with her. And she's like, why are you so frustrated? And I'm like, she goes, I overslept. It's not that big a deal. I'm like, you're right. It isn't.
That's right. Get out of bed.
The discipline that you didn't get yourself up. we're not talking about that right now. It's the fact that you showered and showed up with a coffee. You're so late
Yeah.
that you showered and stopped for coffee?
Yeah.
That's how disciplined you are at this place?
I had that same type of experience. We used to be in the Nextel business, and we had several stores throughout the Grand Strand, and my partner would stop by. My location that I was managing at the time was in Myrtle's Inlet. He would stop by and pick stuff up and carry it back and forth to our Myrtle Beach office, and he would show up, I don't know, 8:40 every morning. That was his routine. Drop his son off, he'd come by 8:40. Well, my help would show up at 8:35. And that same thing, I would get more and more frustrated every day. And it's like, well, what? Nothing's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I didn't get an extra 30 minutes sleep.
Deal.
But that's what it was. Not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It is a big deal.
Yep.
It's not fair to everybody else. You're not living up to your commitment. It's a big deal. The actual act of it isn't a big deal. It's like my wife and I have had those conversations about our daughter. My daughter asked for something small, some widget that costs $2, and I'll tell her no. And then my wife will go by and it's like, it's not a big deal. It's only $2. You're right. The $2 isn't a big deal.
Right.
The big deal is I said no, she cried, and you gave in. That's the big deal. It's not the $2.
Yeah.
I don't know why we can't get on the same page about this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
my
man.
wife's pretty good about, she jokingly says my daughters they got me wrapped around their finger, which is probably true.
They do.
It's probably true. But you can see not the parenting style, but what's more important for her and me are drastically different in some things.
Me too.
Like I jokingly say, I'm like, I've come home from work and I'm still taking off my t-shirt from work and you're trying to throw it in a washing machine, because she grew up in an environment where she only had a couple sets of clothes and she as a child was hand washing them herself.
Yeah.
And so now she never wants her kids to have that. Right.
Yeah.
So now she's over exaggerates the cleaning, but she's very good at, the girls will ask for something or my son will ask for something. I'm not doing that. It's not so much that it's really a no. She's really gauging how are they going to react to that? Yeah. How important is this?
Yeah.
And it's not so much that she's looking for them to fight for it. It's, are you going to throw a tantrum? Are you going to throw a fit? And then eventually, we can work in, is this something you really need or not?
Yeah. I don't mind the widget. It's not about the widget. But if you never tell this child no, what happens when she's 16 and she wants an $1,800 handbag? Now that's the time you're going to try to tell her no.
Yeah.
I mean, it just no's good for people.
Yeah.
It teaches them. They learn stuff from it. It's not a problem. But for my daughter and I'm all about experiences. I'll ask, what's your daddy's favorite thing to do? And she's like, it's daddy-daughter dates. And we'll go out we went out one weekend and I also try to teach her about this kind of stuff because we did more stuff in that weekend than most kids probably do in a year. I mean, we started out on a Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, we're bowling, then we're at rock and jump, then we're playing putt-putt, then we're getting lunch, then we're going to the zoo, then we're going to the movies. And I'm like, that you can't go to school and talk to everybody about what you did because most kids don't get that. But that's all she's ever known. I mean, that's just normal for her that one weekend we just go do whatever. But I'm uber aware of other kids because I grew up extremely poor. My wife grew up poor. Same thing. She got one outfit and one toy or whatever for Christmas. So it's and none of us want our children to have the struggles that we had or whatever. You always want better for your kids, but there is a balance. There's a balance in everything, and there's a balance with that.
There's sometimes I remember my daughters when they were younger. As a parent, I never got a class, and I'm doing the best I can with what I got, right? Yeah. But I remember my daughter was throwing a fit she wanted. I can't remember what it was, like a snack or something. I was like, no, you're not having that. And she kept after me and kept after me and kept after me. And a few minutes, I was like, fine, well, you're only getting a couple. And I remember my buddy, Thomas, he starts laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? He goes, dude, she pestered you right into getting her way. And I'm like, I didn't even notice that, because my mentality was, I want my daughter to be happy.
Yeah, sure.
I don't look at it as a spoiling thing. And I have my oldest daughter. She grew up where she, slept in bed with my wife and I a lot, and I deployed when she was real young. And my wife kind of liked that, that bonding. And then I remember my mom she kept telling us, you're going to run into problems. I'm like, Mom, it's my daughter. I'm going to spoil her if I want to, which is true, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm doing it as my child. She goes, I'm just telling you. I'm like, I know you're probably right, but let us do this. And she wasn't pestering us. She's like, I'm just telling you. And then we learned with my second daughter that because I remember we put our foot down, like, no, today you're sleeping in your crib. It was one of the worst nights we ever had. It was horrible because we created this monster.
Yeah.
And it was our own doing. It wasn't, she's a great kid. It wasn't her. It was us. We created that. Yeah. And so my other daughter, from very, very young, the day we got out of the hospital, we're like, nope, she's staying in the crib. We have to have a separation at night. You know, mom and dad have their own space, and the kids need to understand that. And I remember my daughter, Peyton, always had to have the dark room, the door shut. If there's any night light, she wouldn't sleep very well. And the distinct differences between those kids was unbelievable.
It was funny, you know. Somebody told me that you mentioned Mike Tyson earlier, and I remember his quote about everybody's got a plan until I punch him in the face. Yeah. And when right before my wife had our daughter, it was, when she cries, we're not picking her up. We're not. Day 2, that was thrown out the window.
There's nothing worse than having your kids want something.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's different because I remember looking at other friends and families, kids. Kids, don't let them.
Why you gonna let that kid act like that?
Yeah,
let him talk to me like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then your kids do it. And you're like, I know.
It's not that. I got the full context now.
Yeah, I know, but I've said that 100 times about my kids.
Yeah,
you know?
I was. My daughter is so quick-witted, and I love her telling jokes and stuff like that. And 2 quick stories. We're driving home one time, and it just popped up in my memories on Facebook. And she's like, Daddy, will you take me to Target? And I'm like, what for? So I want you to buy me whatever. I'm like, no, we're not going to Target to buy that. She's like, well, I want my mommy. I said, well, I wanted a son. She's like, he wouldn't like you either. And so she's always telling jokes. So I buy her a joke book recently, and we go to eat dinner at a restaurant, and the waitress drops off drinks. And she's like, ma'am, do you mind to get my daddy a straw because he sucks? This poor waitress didn't know what to do. It cracked me up because she's a little comedian. I know the full context of where it come from. But I could see somebody else saying that, like, I would never let my child talk like that to me or whatever. Right. But it is. It's about context and everything.
It's funny because I can see within the kids, the different personality traits that they get from each of us.
Sure.
You know, my youngest daughter, Peyton, she will do anything for animals. And I grew up an animal lover. You know, I hunted and fished, but, you know, dogs and cats. I loved having pets around the house. My daughter's the same way. I'm trying to teach her some stuff. Remember we talked about your dog, and petting them at the appropriate time is giving praise at the wrong times and the right times. And I'm constantly telling, will you get out of that dog's face? It's not a baby, you know? And then my other daughter is just so quick-witted and funny. And my son's the same way. He's quick-witted. He's funny. And all 3 of them, they always want to do things for other people. You know, sometimes my daughter Payne, we got to stop. Like, stop! I can get it myself. Or like, she just overly wants to help other people, and I think that you can see that from us. My wife, she works in the ER in Conway, and she's all about public service, right? And I wanted to be a police officer because I want to help other people, right? It wasn't I want to carry a gun and tell people what to do. It was never ever like that. And so I chose military because it was a way to serve other people, right? And there's some action and some A-type personality stuff behind it too, but being able to be there for other people and to help other people is really a motivating thing for me.
How difficult is it during deployments to be away from your children and family and that? I mean, that's obviously an experience I've never had. I made an analogy one time where my wife was just like, don't ever say that again. But I said, because we were trying to talk about deployments, and I said, look, it's like training for a football game and never getting to play in the game. And she's like, yeah, don't ever say that again. Right.
But it's really all we've ever known in our family, right? It's part of who we are, right? And the one thing I enjoy deploying. I do. I enjoy deployments, and it's not because I'm all about the danger, because it's not all about danger.
Right.
Not every part of their deployment. I've been in deployments where we did nothing.
Right.
You know, it's being away from family was the hardest part.
Sure.
It is so hard. It was harder. My son was always a little bit older, and you could kind of talk to him. You know, my daughters in my last couple deployments, I'm deployed 6 times, and so. As they got older, you could kind of talk to them about stuff. My son more so, he could kind of understand. My daughters are like, bye, Dad, see ya. And I'm like, I don't think you understand what type of goodbye this is. Dad's just not going to work for an hour.
Right.
This is a bigger deal. And we've just adjusted. And in the bigger schemes, I think that we've learned that our kids are so resilient. And I got to focus on that, because my biggest fear as a parent is you don't want to screw your kids up.
Yeah.
I didn't have any training on this. I just want my kid. I don't want to screw my kids up. You would never do it intentionally, but you fear you're going to mess your kids up. Like, man, I wished I'd taught them more about X, Y, and Z, but looking back, I think I turned out okay. And my mom and dad didn't, have a finger on top of me all the time. But it was tough. It's tough the whole time we're gone.
Sure.
The beginning is tough. Through the middle, it's better. We did do a kind of surprise reunion one time during what we call R&R. So we got to come back for a week or two, and we surprised the kids at school and stuff. And looking at those videos, it's like, ugh. Breaks my heart watching those kids.
I can't watch them. I can't watch those kind of videos. Surprise dad, mom's back on deployment. Immediately, I'm like, I'm not crying.
But it had a bigger impact on our marriage, I think, because I'm very laid back. I've always been very laid back. My wife we're so opposite. That's why we do so well together. She likes things her way, and I like that about her. I pick on her. I'm like, you're a control freak. She's not a control freak, but that's just her personality, and she's very go-getter, and I enjoy that, right? So when you deploy, they teach you, they give you classes and stuff as you're redeploying and trying to help you reestablish into the family. You don't want to come back and be the disciplinarian right off the bat and stuff. And I think where it affected us is I didn't reassert myself soon enough. I took it to the extreme, right? So I just kind of came back, and I was just another person, because they've got a routine that they've got, and you don't want to come in there and just, no, hey, we're having dinner at 6, not 5, or whatever, right?
What about technology? I mean, can you Skype with family and that? I mean, I mean, I'd assume that has to make it way better than it was, 15, 20 years ago.
And every deployment was always a little different. I was just talking to a family this morning. They've got a son that's been deployed too, and his brother's now joining. But I remember we had a satellite phone, and we were deployed, and we were in Afghanistan, and I called my dad, and I said, Dad, there's a delay, so you be careful. We can't talk at the same time because there's a delay. And he's like, what'd you do today? And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a horrible phone call. But he just didn't understand, right?
Yeah.
So every deployment was a little bit different. For the most part, you always have what we call MWRs. They get computer labs and phones and stuff like that. I didn't like to talk on the phone too much. It was harder for me to hear their voice and stuff. It was better for the kids, especially at their age. I would talk to them, but not as much as I talked to my wife. I talked to my wife almost every single day.
Really?
It was usually on Messenger, Yahoo Messenger or something. Okay. Because you're in a computer lab with other. I don't want them listening to my conversation. Right. And really, it's the conversations are good and bad. You don't want to create a homesickness where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. It's part of my job, but. The other piece of that is it's hard because those conversations are really one-sided. Hey, what'd you guys do today? What are the girls doing in school? Right. What's Dylan doing? Is he playing? Is he playing soccer? Sure. Because I can't hey, what's the weather like? Right. I can't tell you. Yeah. Well, you can't tell me what the weather is.
Can't tell you anything.
I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Because it's an operational security thing. I can't. If I tell you the weather, it might tip off where I'm at. I can't. That's not. And. Not that my wife wants to know that stuff. She doesn't. She cares, but she doesn't care.
Right. Well, she knows. I mean, she's been through this for.
Yeah. I remember one time I called her from Newfoundland. We were coming home, and I was like, "Are you tracking? I'm coming home right now," because we really had zero contact during that deployment. And she's like, wow, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "I'm in Newfoundland right now." She's like, "What?" I'm calling from Newfoundland. I'm coming home, and it was because they didn't want anybody to know we were coming home. It's a security thing, and. It gets better and better through time, technology. And then, during the, first couple deployments, capabilities just weren't there. Right. And then how to manage the security piece of that was a little rough too. What's the kind of getting back to recruit stuff? What's the biggest challenge you see with young people either getting in? I mean, is it, are you I'm assuming there's just, physical
limitation, physical issues, the education and passing ASVABs. What kind of challenges are you seeing with recruiting when young people?
On our side, I like I talked about earlier, a person walking in the door is just, they look at this as a way to, I wish I had a number of how many people have told me, well, I don't really want to go to college, so I guess I'll join the Army. This is not for you then.
Right.
Because coming to the Army, if you are not continuing your education, you are falling behind your peers.
Well, I can remember, in high school, that was, well, if you don't go to college, you go to the military,
Mm-hmm.
and
they still think that. And
like, you can get a job tomorrow, just go sign up, pass the test, and
it's
the
not
physical.
that easy.
Yeah.
The hardest part about the Army is getting in it.
Yeah.
That's what I tell a lot of folks.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't want
because once
that.
you're in, we take care of you.
Right.
As leaders, we groom you to do certain things. We groom you to be a leader, and the leaders will groom you to be effective at that position that you're at, and you groom you for higher positions, stuff like that. So we're always going to take care of you.
Sure.
Medically, if you get sick, go to sick call.
Yeah.
Your tooth hurts, go get your tooth fixed. And it's really more of not a 9-to-5 job, because we do PT in the mornings, but it's more of a, basic training. Everybody's like, I don't know if I could stay in the barracks with these big, that's training.
Yeah.
That's whatever, how many weeks that is for you.
It's a drop. It's nothing.
I'm like, I show people, I showed some parents the other day. I have some pictures that I Googled it, because we try to be as absolutely transparent as we can. Because good news travels, but bad news travels faster.
It does.
So what I do is I say, listen, I want you to trust what I'm saying to you, but I want you to validate what I'm saying. So the images of like barracks, at the units, they're basically like 2-bedroom apartments, right? So you have your own room, and then your roommate, you share a common area and a bathroom, but you have your own privacy. It's like a 2-bedroom apartment, right? And then you show people those pictures that I straight Googled. I didn't just make these up or go to and take them myself. I Googled those, and I know what they look like, so I know they're the accurate pictures. But when you show them, like, parents are like, what? This is what you're thinking the rows of bunks.
It's just not a bunch of bunks.
No, this
like
is
gym
not.
pop. Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, you get up in the morning, typically about 6 o'clock, you're at work. 6:30, you have formation, because that's when the flag goes up, and then we do PT from 6:30 to 7:30. Now from 7:30 to 9, I don't care what you do. Go to your room, go to sleep. I don't care. Now come to work before 9 o'clock, because that's the next hard time, is 9 o'clock. Be in this uniform typically. Showered, eat your breakfast. Don't show up at 9 o'clock. And a lot of units will have formations at 9 o'clock. They call morning parade, but sometimes they don't. If we have tasks going on or some stuff we're doing, we don't always have that formation. But don't show up at 9 o'clock and ask me to run to Burger King because you're hungry. Take care of what you got. If you're not hungry, don't eat.
Right.
It's not that you're going to eat and you hurry up and eat. Hurry up, hurry. That's that atmosphere is gone. Right. Now you're a professional.
Right.
You are truly a professional, and that's where we kind of separate ourselves from everybody else. Is we are a professional now, and we demand you to act that way, right? And so people always, I had a kid one time at a school said, "Man, what's wrong with smoking a little bit of weed?" Explain to me what's right with that.
What's good about it?
What benefit are you getting from that, right? And so folks that come in, I see a lot in the news with the physical demanding piece and a lot of overweight people. You're going to have that regardless.
Right.
So the Army kind of implemented this thing. It's called the OPAT test, where we test your physical ability in certain events: standing, long jump, medicine ball throw, deadlift, shuttle sprints. And a lot of the students that we enlist have done the shuttle sprints dozens of times in school.
Sure.
Right? You get between the cones, between the beeps kind of thing. And a lot of people already know what it is. But that's based off of, like I said, we're a business, right? So when I'm talking to an applicant, and I'm talking to them about medical stuff, for example, like if you've had any surgeries, broken bones, pins, plates, screws, stuff like that, I'm asking those for specific reasons, because when you go there into training, and the numbers might be off, but the trainings are thousands of dollars to send you to training.
Absolutely.
It's 30,000, 40,000 to send you through training. Let's say you go to training, you don't tell me anything, you got a hip injury, right? You don't say nothing to me. You go down to MEPS, and they're hard on you at MEPS, right? But it's a reason. It's the last line of defense, right? Because we're a business. We're a business. I don't care who you think you are, but this is a business, right? The cool thing is we've been in business longer than America's been here. That's kind of it's a cool
good history.
Cool T-shirt mantra, right?
Yeah.
But so we really try to pull that information from you. Go to MEPS, I try to pull that information because we're the last line of defense, right? So you go down to training. Let's say we spent 30, 40 or whatever the numbers are. I'd have to look them up to be certain. But we go through training, you don't say nothing. you're good. Now you're at your AIT, your advanced individual training. We're teaching you the specifics about that job you've picked. You're about halfway through. Maybe we might be up in another 20 grand into your training. Sure. You're like, man, my hip's starting to bother me. Well, now you're one of us. We're going to take care of you, aren't you? Aren't we? So we're going to send you to the medic. And the doctors are looking at you and like,
this is an old injury.
Even if they don't determine that, let's say they determine it to be something that is a job-related thing. Like, hey, this is something that's going to keep you out of the military, right? So we're going to send you home. So you honorable discharge, you go about your day. But guess what? We're still a business. Look at all that money we just lost. And we still don't have somebody filling that seat at a unit that we desperately need, right? So we have to ask those tough questions at the beginning to make sure you're at the end. So what we started finding out as an organization is we got a 110-pound kid or 120-pound kids. I want to be infantry. All right, cool. It's your luxury in the Army. You get to pick your job before you join, right? So let's say you go down to your unit and they're like, hey, you're going to be in weapons squad because that's where we need personnel. You go to weapons squad and you're lugging around a 240.
Right.
And then we start breaking you down and you're physically not able to do that job, right? So now we've got this OPAT test that gives us the assessment to see, are you physically able to do the job that you've picked, right? It's a secondary thing after you pick your job, but it has to be done before you ship out to your training. And it's a way for us to understand, are you able to do infantry? Are you really able to at 120 pounds? You know, and so is it a perfect system? No, but there's no perfect systems in life. But it's a way we're trying to figure out to put the best folks at the best places, because we're seeing a lot of bonuses. I mean, we've got bonuses of upwards of $40,000.
Crazy.
Because those bonuses are focused towards people that are smart. Smarter Army, smarter soldier, smarter Army.
Yeah.
Right? People come in like, well, I want a bonus. Okay. I don't control that piece. You know, we'll see what we got for jobs that you've qualified. So out of the 150 jobs, you know, you've got... You narrow it down to what you're qualified for is going to knock off quite a few, and then what's available, right? But I think to answer your original question, it varies from person to person. You know, I don't think we have a large population of overweight or a large population of moral problems or a large population of people that can't pass the test. I think you get samples of it across the board, and we do our best to kind of filter those out.
But they just come down and talk to any branch, and you'll answer questions. There's no commitment. I mean, there's, you know, just
I tell people
having
all
a
the
conversation.
time. I tell people all the time. You know, you're out talking to people, like, "Are you in the military?" I talked to a kid. I'm like, "Are you in the military?" He's like, "No." I mean, you look like a military kid. And we start talking, and he said, "Well, I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe, you know, I got to talk to so and so and so and so, and then, you know, I think I'll come down maybe next week." Okay, but why are we waiting? Like, people, I don't know where they get this thought process, and I got it. I get a lot of parents. We as an organization in the Myrtle Beach office, especially, and I can't speak for everybody, but I always say, hey, listen, if you're a high school student, make sure mom and dad know you're coming down here. You're not joining the Army coming down here. Mom and dad, I want them there. They've got more life experience. They're going to ask those tough questions that we need you to know. But also, when we get people to come in like, well, you can go there, but don't sign anything. To be honest with you, I could have you sign every form we've ever had. That doesn't put you in the Army. That's not a contract, right? We get you prepared for that piece. But coming down and talking to us, get the most information, the most current, up-to-date information from us. My goal when you first come into that recruiting station is to say, listen, what are your goals in life? Right? What are you trying to do with yourself? Is the Army something that could help you in that, right? At the end of the day, and I remember when I first got into recruiting, there was two things that I had difficulty with. Getting somebody on a practice test, which I don't know why that was tough for me, it just was. And then making at the end of the time, are you ready to join the Army? I felt weird about that. They don't give us these great sales techniques and all. They teach us how to build packets and put people in the Army, right? Because we're soldiers, we're going to make it happen. So we learn through trial and error what's better. There are some things they're going to teach us, right, as recruiters. But at the end of the day, I started adjusting my Army interview with folks based off of what was comfortable for me, because I come across more honest, because I'm trying to be honest with you, but I'm more comfortable by telling you right up front, hey, listen, you're going to take a practice test today. I know what you're even going to say. You're going to tell me, I don't want to take it next week. Nobody wants to take a test.
But
it's not something that's going to be part of your packet. This is so when you leave here, I want you to understand, what do I need to get fixed, if anything, before I make the commitment to join the Army, right? And at the end, I say, hey, at the end of this, I'm going to ask you if you're ready, and I'm going to keep saying that to you. And it gave me comfort at the end of that first initial point. Are you ready to join the Army or not? Right? Because it's just, I felt weird saying it. I don't know. It's just a personal thing. And so, I kind of changed it up how I say it. But at the end of the day, I want you to come in, talk to us. You're not joining the Army that day. I used to always joke around people like, hey, we got a bus leaving here in about 2 hours to go to basic training. Are you ready? If that person said yes, they made me so nervous.
Red flags.
Like I joke, one kid said, I'm
let's
like,
go.
You ain't got a cell phone. You got to shut off for a month or two. Like you're just ready to roll. Like what? What are you running from? Right. And there are some folks out there that are like that. They're just eager to do this. Honestly, I think the misconception is people think that, everybody's infantry or we sleep in the woods.
Right.
We're a professional organization that some of the state-of-the-art technology is either tested or run with us. Some Air Force guys invented GPS. How has that impacted society?
All
GPS,
of us,
right? So the military has such an impact on initial testing of stuff and how it's implemented in the future. For example, I worked on futuristic equipment, wearable computers, stuff like that for when I left Ranger Regiment. And they had, at that time, different uniforms we changed, and there's a whole reason why we changed, right? And so I started learning how they test equipment, use equipment. One of the things I learned was Camelback, right? Camelback wanted to give, because what they did was after the first initial deployments, they started looking at soldiers' gear. What do we have that we brought on deployments and we use and we enjoyed, or we're effectively using? And what did we not even deploy? Why are we even having this in our inventory? And what did soldiers buy on their own that they thought they needed that we weren't providing? One of those things were Camelbacks. Camelbacks were kind of a new thing back then. So they started trying to implement it into the Army. Well, the Army just doesn't just buy a Camelback. Hey, good job, Camelback. They have to put it out to bid. There's some stuff that's above my head, but you can't just do that. So they started getting all different types of hydration on the move is what we call it. Hydration on the move systems, all different types of companies. And those companies would give us samples. They test them with the soldiers. The soldiers would give feedback. You'll notice some of the sport models still have it, but back in the day they had the blue hose.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's originally what Camelback always had. But as soldiers, we can't have a blue hose. Right. So we took this stuff called tubular nylon. I remember in Ranger Battalion we got Camelbacks. We took tubular nylon, covered up the tubes. And then the Army went back and said, hey, our soldiers are asking for these types of things. And some of the things were antimicrobial, so we don't have to clean them so much, right? We want a thicker bladder, so maybe we're leaning against rocks or trees and training and stuff. It's not going to puncture. We want the tubes covered,
That's good feedback for them too.
Exactly.
It's
so
great for
how much
business.
advancement did that provide them? And so, you put that stuff out to bid, and there's a whole logistical piece that's above me. But, we're able to have cutting edge technology that's utilized, like, for example, the wearable computer we had was the Land Warrior system. I helped talk to people about and talk to developers about it. And I always used to tell soldiers when I explained to them the Land Warrior system, like, listen, the capabilities of this system are endless.
Right.
Our wish list is endless. Our wish list is endless. The capabilities of this system is still a little bit. Our wish list is this big. Right. Capabilities are this big. We can't be wireless right now. Bluetooth technology to be encrypted is not right there yet. But so it's just amazing to see all that stuff. So you can't just have somebody coming off the street who wants to just, I don't want to go to college. I'm going to do this. We need folks we're looking for folks who we're trying to be well-developed and well-rounded. We want you to be eager for your education, self-development in the Army, whether it's for your job, personal level. It's huge for us, right? Self-motivation as a soldier is huge. It sets you apart from everybody else. And it's really something you'll find. You'll fall behind your peers without it.
Well, like any other organization, you want the best talent you can get your hands on, just like the rest of us. So,
we've got some incredible soldiers out there that are doing some incredible things. And we all join for different reasons. Right. And I join for my reasons. And if you're to join, you join for your reasons. But we're required to do X, Y, and Z. But you know, some of the things that soldiers are doing with not just technology, but just overall, like, you know, like David Goggins, the stuff that he is, the mindset that we are providing, you know, I mean, just look at it. Yes, it's a job, but the aspects of being successful in that job are so dynamic. You have to be physically fit, mentally tough, mentally strong. You gotta be smart. You gotta be absorbing knowledge and being able to implement it quickly. You know, we can't just sit here and tell you 15 times 2 + 2 is 4, man. I'm going to tell you 2 + 2 and we got to move out. You pick it up or it's going to be a bad day for you, you know? And so we need those fast-minded folks. And I've noticed a lot of the folks who are successful in the Army are folks who are coming to the Army because they want to better themselves and they're looking for a dynamic way to do it. And this is the most challenging jobs out there, you know, and it's challenging mentally and physically.
Sure.
You know, some of us, you know, I came in because I wanted to spruce up my resume, but I stayed because of all the, you know, all those other benefits, you know.
So
I mean, where else are you going to get a job where I can guarantee you a job for 4 years as long as you don't get in trouble? You know,
I mean, I've learned a ton today because, you know, I had all kinds of old stereotypes from whenever I was talking back in the 90s and, you know, watching me, whatever content you take in or whatever. I've learned a ton, man. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
I had a lot of fun, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.